Welcome everyone to the second installment of the California Meet the Squad with Working Families Party. My name is Jane Kim, California Director, and with me we have the Cudahy Mayor, Elizabeth Alcantar, who is running for State Assembly this year. And it is so exciting to have you on. So before we get started, coffee or tea?
Tea in the morning, coffee at night. I'm a big fan.
I have brought my tea with me, and I have never drank coffee.
Wow, that would be hard for me. I don't drink it for the ability to stay up. I drink it for the taste. So that would be hard to just drop it and not have it.
I somehow managed to get through 6 election cycles without caffeine, but it did mean I had to sleep, which was hard on our team. But tell us a little bit about yourself for members of our audience who are not as familiar with you.
Sure. So Elizabeth Alcantar, I am 28, turning 29 this year. First got elected at 25 years old to the Cudahy City Council, ousting some incumbents after having run campaigns in the city for many years. Before that, I've been doing organizing work, community education work around issues with labor, immigration, and education. In fact, I got started doing access to higher education work in Cudahy for those of us that were first generation, had no idea where to start, and then went off to college and experienced things like culture shock and lack of mental health resources. I got started because I went to the city council meeting wanting to get some free space for our youth and stuck around, now sitting on the city council after several years of that work. And yeah, since then I've focused on different issues like housing, environment, which are obviously really key issues over time, but especially in impacted communities like Cudahy, where we're 96% Latino, almost half of us are immigrant ourselves, the rest are first generation. Median income is $38,000. And so all of these issues just adversely affect us that much more, which is why it's been my focus, particularly as a renter, as someone that lived here my whole life. And so yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So you're one of the youngest members of our squad, not the youngest, but one of our youngest members. Tell us what got you to run at such a young age. You were 25 years old when you ran for city council?
Yeah, I know I'm starting to have to get used to not being the youngest, because for many years it was a lot of comments about you're so young, and I was 25, 26 when I started. When I became mayor, I was 26, and so I was very much used to the you're so young comments, and now they're starting to be less often. But I decided to run for council because I had been involved for so long. I started organizing in our city when I was 19, 20 years old. At that point, I joined the Planning Commission, was on there for 5 years. And in the entire time, I was, again, organizing, doing community education work, very heavy on the ground, when I saw a vote go down in our city council chambers that I was not appreciative of. And for me, it was at that point that I realized I don't want to lobby my council members to vote the way that I think is correct and transparent for community, but I want to be the one that votes. And of course, I heard the typical comments of you're too young, just wait it out. It'll be your time at some point. But for me, it was important to show that I already have experience. I'm from the community, that's important. And so as we transition into this race for assembly, I think that's incredibly important as well. I am the youngest candidate for this seat specifically, but I have so much experience and such a strong track record of standing firm on our issues, which I think is precisely what we need in this time. We can no longer afford to flake on our communities, to stand weak on certain issues, or to even be absent on votes that are so key to our communities. We need someone that is willing to take that role. And despite me being young, I'm always willing to take it. So that's why I'm here.
It's incredible to have so many young candidates. I think the youngest member of our squad is South San Francisco Council member James Coleman, who I believe is 22 or 23 years old.
So yeah, that's awesome.
Tell us a little bit about Assembly District 58.
Right. So it's the old 58th, the new 64th, which is causing some confusion with like who's the incumbent, who's running. But the new 64th spans from Bell Gardens, Cudahy on the western side, all the way out to La Habra on the eastern side. So it varies pretty widely. On the western side, it's definitely more working class communities. Income is much lower. Renter proportions of each city are much higher as well. In Cudahy, we're 85% renter compared to cities on the eastern side, which were much more single family home ownership style. And so the district varies widely. But I think as we look at the issues, they're pretty similar. In Southeast LA, everyone knows that one of those big issues is environmental justice. But we don't necessarily think that when we look at the eastern side of the district. However, when you actually talk to the people on the ground, one of those big issues is truck traffic, is what is brought to the city. And so although it's maybe behind the scenes on the eastern side of the district, it's absolutely present, and people definitely talk about it. Of course, small business support spans across the district. And so I think that as we talk about the issues, that's what's really getting people to start thinking about the district in a different way. We're also very Latino as a district, albeit different generations of Latino. On this side, you'll see more first gen, and you'll transition more into second, third gen out in the eastern side.
So when I first heard of you in 2020, you were also then the mayor of Cudahy, and the news headlines was Delta was illegally dumping jet fuel in your neighborhood, in your community, by your schools. Tell us a little bit more about that, and what that experience was like for you to show and demonstrate leadership at such a young age, so early in your elected career.
Right. And I think that again shows how important it is to have young people at the table. At that point, I was 26. I was at my job working when I have Google alerts on my phone. So anytime Cudahy comes out in a news headline, it comes to my phone. I saw the headline, Cudahy, park, airplane, and fatality. And now that I know, and looking back at it, I know that the news sites might have been exaggerating on the fatality part. However, the reality was that a jet plane had dumped 15,000 gallons of jet fuel on our city. And that included students that were out at recess, teachers that were supervising them, city hall staff, any resident that was just out and about walking to the store, taking care of their plants, right? And to be frank with you, a lot of those issues with eye rashes, skin irritations, even things like diarrhea lasted for weeks on our residents. And initially we were being told our jobs as elected officials is to calm people down. That was their entire purpose. And so for the first press conference, it was, Liz, your job is to calm people down. They're scared. As an elected official, I always speak about myself as an advocate and organizer who governs. And so for me, my purpose is not to calm people down. My purpose is to inform them, to ignite them, to do the work. And so at that point, I didn't have the information to tell people to just calm down and relax. And instead, it was directing into resources. Our community is vastly underinsured and uninsured. And so one of those key pieces was ensuring that if you do not have insurance, if you do not know where to go, this is where you can go. It's an FQHC clinic, a community clinic, or these different facilities that are in our region. So that was one thing that frankly, I think other people would have reacted differently. And because I was honest up front with, we don't know what long-term effects are, community started to build that trust versus, public officials that came out and said, everything is going to be okay in 48 hours. Community remembered that in the following 3 days when we had a town hall and they still had skin irritations, they still felt ill. And so I think that's where that difference lies. We were able to push for more funding for things like food planters, tree canopy, park cleanup, etc., because we were also so strong on the issues. And now we're able to count on those funds for long term.
What gave you the courage to lead in that moment? When you woke up in the morning?
Right. You never plan for those issues, obviously. Especially January 7th was when I became mayor. January 14th, so 1 week later, was when Delta did this. And you never imagine that you're going to have to deal with this sort of crisis. But for me, it was seeing my community. In a community like Cudahy, you know so many people as you walk by, and even if you don't know them, you're walking and they're outside tending to their garden. They're going to, buenos dias, buenas tardes. So there's a strong sense of community. And knowing that the kids that were crying outside of City Hall, the school is right adjacent to City Hall, they're my neighbors. They're my neighbors' kids. And for me, that's what's important. I lead with passion. I lead with compassion. For the horoscope folks out there, I'm a Cancer, so emotion is very high on the list for me. And I think that's what was important for me. It's my community at the center of it all.
So, part of our mission at Working Families Party this year is to make the California legislature sexy. We want voters to care about these races. We want voters to know who their representative is. We want more people to be excited about running for the state legislature. So what made you want to run for the California state legislature? And what do you find sexy about the state ledge?
Making policymaking sexy is hard. But I think for us, especially as a region, our region and our district has been for a very long time ignored. We now have really great allies in the legislature, but I think we have such an opportunity to keep those allies. Cristina Garcia has been an ally to Southeast LA, but with her retirement from Assembly, that means we don't have her anymore. And I think for us, that's what's important. It's sexy to have resources. It's sexy to know that we can count on someone to talk about Cudahy, to talk about Bell, South Whittier. It's an unincorporated part of the district that is vastly ignored. And so they need more support, right? I think that's what's sexy about it. And it's representation at the local level, it's resources and funding, but it's also bills. What kind of bills are being voted on, which are being brought forward in a district like this, which is over 50% renter? We should be talking more about renters issues, and we haven't.
And what do you tell your friends? How do you get them to care about this race? Because I'm sure many of them don't really understand what the state ledge does or even what you do on the city council.
Right. It's a lot of conversations over, drinks and food. And I think that over the last 4 years, they've started to understand because of the city council stuff. And so now it's transitioning over to, okay, it's this work, but on a state level, and there's more members to talk to. It's not just for other people. They also have some familiarity with, for example, the speaker's job because of his work around arts funding in the district. And so I think that made it easier in terms of a transition and talking about our work in the state assembly. But it's very confusing, especially my parents, for example, talking to them about what the LA County Federation labor endorsement means was a little bit harder to visualize for them, but it's a lot of conversations late at night. I stop over at their place and explain some things.
So you've now been elected to the state legislature to represent Assembly District 64. What are the first 5 bills that you introduce?
The first 5 bills. So I think one of them is around healthcare, and a lot of us have been talking about healthcare, obviously, in so many different ways. I think one of those pieces is long-term care. As we talk to our residents here in the city, they are already doing the work, sometimes unpaid because they either don't know the process or because there isn't enough funding to bring them onto the system to care for their families. So that's one piece. Obviously, maybe not being the leader, as I'd be a freshman legislator, but supporting things like Medicare for all is really important. I mentioned renters issues and housing and environment. I think that's a big piece. And we have several bills already in the legislature that didn't make it the first iteration that should be, which I'm very supportive of. One of them being having private and charter schools be more open and transparent and providing information around air quality, environmental toxins, and environmental chemicals. Here in the city, we have a school that is building on land that needs more remediation, but is not happening, and is now only happening because there was a lawsuit from community advocates. We shouldn't have to rely on community advocate lawsuits for that sort of work. I think we also need to talk about stricter rent stabilization and relief considering the pandemic. the last 5 years have been so different for many of us. And so reimagining a lot of the pieces, I think, is going to be really important when it comes to legislation.
All right. So I asked all of our candidates this because one of the aspects of campaigning that we want our members to understand is that in order to win, we need to talk to voters directly. So I'm asking all of the candidates about their favorite door knocking or canvassing story in their district.
Sure. So in my district, well, obviously my favorite part is whenever they bring you in for food or drinks. That's easy. But there was also a woman, and this was now 2011, with the presidential campaign, actually. And I was knocking on doors and talking to folks, and one of the big pieces was obviously Obamacare at the time. Now we're talking about beyond that, but at the time that was a conversation, and there was a woman that as she saw my shirt and for the campaign that I was knocking on doors for, she started crying because her son had relied on Obamacare to bring in a donor, and it was because of that they had no insurance. They had already discounted any sort of chance for her son to continue on this world, and it was because of that healthcare access that was given to her at that point that she was able to now have her son healthy living next to her. And so I think about those sorts of stories and the impact. Of course, seeing a woman crying and thanking a campaign is very, I think, abnormal, but I think it was something that touched my heart. I still remember it many years later. And when I think about things like Medicare for All, I get excited again, because when we think about Obamacare and just the stretch that it would take to actually get Medicare for All and how many more families it would affect, I think that's the impact that I want to see. And that's what gets me excited about knocking on doors, talking to people about these things that affect real lives. Policy saves lives if we do it the right way.
So this is a question I asked Assemblymember Kalra, but should you win, what is your commute to Sacramento going to look like?
Yeah, that's been a thought. I think obviously the quickest is plane. It's 2 hours versus a 7-hour drive. I've also tried looking at train, ways to get up there, but it's a lot harder to commute up there via train, even just to get some meetings in with legislators and whatnot. So it'll likely be plane. But hopefully we're able to count on some train stations soon.
Well, but tell me how it would go. Like, how far do you drive? Which airport?
Right. So I'm so used to LAX. I've never tried Long Beach Airport, but I was told that it's just so much better. So I'm going to be giving that a try soon. And hopefully I like it enough to transition over to Long Beach Airport, obviously to Sacramento. I know in
airport, and then how long is the flight?
Right. So driving to the airport depends. I'm an early morning person, so 30 minutes is usually good. I am the type of person that shows up to the airport 2.5 hours in advance. So I've never missed a flight, but it also means getting to the airport 2.5 hours in advance. And then getting on the plane, it's about an hour 45, 2 hours, depending. And then obviously from the plane, getting off and getting into town is another 30 minutes or so. So it's a pretty heavy lift. It's a half a day of traveling, even just from LA.
I'm the person that is the last passenger to run onto a flight. So I'm opposite of you. So let's go to our lightning round, the end of our interview. So you already answered my first question. Are you a morning or night person?
So although for flights, I'm a morning person, I'm not a morning person by any means. I'm a night person all the way.
And what song do you canvass or campaign to get energized?
Anything Bad Bunny. I have an 8-hour Bad Bunny playlist, but the specific song that's been really pumping me up is El Mundo Es Mío, which talks about, the world is mine, the world is yours. And so it amps me up.
Yeah, that's a great song. What are you binging when you're not campaigning?
Between Schitt's Creek and BoJack Horseman. That's it. I just go back.
Favorite place to eat in your district? Or one, I realize it's hard to choose.
Right. There's a few places. I guess I'll go to, there's Princesa Bakery. It has just amazing chicken, green chile empanadas in the morning. You have to show up early or else you won't get any, but that's my absolute favorite. Absolutely.
You're going to have to take me when I come down to LA. That sounds
amazing.
So as a resident of LA County, who do you root for, the Clippers or the Lakers?
Not a basketball person, but Lakers, I think. Okay. More of a soccer fan, LAFC all the way.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
What's your go-to karaoke song?
I don't do karaoke.
But if you were at a karaoke party, what do you think you would put on?
I would probably there's this one song, Como Cactus, Tommy Torres. I love that song, belting it out in my car.
Awesome. One of the hardest jobs you've ever had?
Hardest jobs? My first job, it was a call center asking for donations at my university. Learned a lot, but so hard.
I did that job too in undergrad.
So hard.
Calling alumni for donations, really tough job.
Yeah.
So if you had to delete every app but 3 on your phone, which 3 would you keep?
It would probably be Twitter, Google Maps, and does the phone app count? Does that get deleted too if I don't use it? The actual call?
No, the call function.
Okay. TikTok.
TikTok, all right.
A de-stressor.
Assemblymember Calro was all about social media.
I also need that maps. Otherwise I'll get lost.
The Google Map is key. And I'm curious how many others will state that, but especially as someone who is running for office, Google Maps is clutch.
Right.
To make it around your district. So final question, tell us one thing you love about California.
I guess the easiest way to put it is like diversity, but it's diversity in people, diversity in places. You drive one way, you see the beach, the other way is the mountains. The weather transitions a lot from Northern California to Southern California. There's just so much. California encompasses everything.
We're so lucky to live here.
Yes, very, very lucky.
Thank you, Mayor Alcantar. I look forward to calling you Assembly Member by the end of the year. Good luck with your race. And we're so excited that you're running. Thank you for running. And we're so excited that you're part of our California squad.
Thank you for having me.
¿Quién dijo que no? Que no puedo. Yo hago lo que me dé la gana. ¿Quién dijo que no? Que no puedo. Yo hago lo que me dé la gana.